the station covering all of the DMV. This is DC News Now.
Ahead on DC News Now at 9 for some changes to the Monday morning commute in DC with a large international summit underway this week as the president plays host to leaders from across the continent of Africa. Plus, with rent prices going up, some Maryland leaders are stepping up with possible solutions. The idea is now being explored. And the city of Frederick continues a longtime tradition this holiday season, and it continues to pay it forward. Good evening. Thank you for joining us for DC News Now at 9. It's Sunday, December 11th. I'm Annalisa Gale. We start this evening with meteorologist Scott Sumner, who is monitoring a weather alert later this week. Hey, Scott.
Hello there, Annalisa, and hello to you on this Sunday evening. Yeah, things right now are fairly quiet across the area. Temperatures are chilly, and the earlier rains, well, they have moved off to the north at this point in time, and we're seeing quiet conditions overnight tonight. However, as Annalisa alluded to just a moment ago, we take a look at the map and you'll be able to see that an area of low pressure that has brought us some earlier rain showers will continue to move away. High pressure, Big Blue H, will be our friend for a couple of days, and then we'll wait for a storm system that's way out in the western portion of the United States, basically, and that is going to cross the country. Now, what type of precipitation does it bring to our area, and how much of it? Well, I'll talk about that in my full forecast.
All right, thanks, Scott. Well, if you live or work near Mount Vernon Square in D.C., you'll want to leave yourself some extra time to get where you're going this week. President Biden is hosting dozens of African leaders at the Washington Convention Center. DC News Now's Daniel Hamburg joining us now with what you need to know ahead of your Monday morning commute. Hey, Daniel.
Hey, Annalisa. The bulk of the road closures around the convention center will start tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. You can see this very colored map here, meaning buses will have to take alternative routes, and the Mount Vernon Metro station will be temporarily closed starting tomorrow night. For many blocks around the Washington Convention Center, fencing is up to protect dignitaries from across Africa. President Joe Biden is hosting dozens of African leaders for the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit that begins Tuesday.
It sounds really important. It's great. I just hope people can kind of get around okay and that everything goes smoothly.
As preparations are underway, locals and tourists are having to find their way around the new security measures.
Lots of getting stuck in places and having to sneak through fencing, hoping that we don't get in trouble for sneaking through fencing, and lots of police presence everywhere.
You can see the road closures on this map. Roads highlighted in red will be closed starting at 6 a.m. on Monday through Saturday at 12:01 a.m. For the roads highlighted in pink, there will be emergency no parking from Wednesday at 10 p.m. through Saturday at 12:01 a.m.
We had to kind of go around and into the road a little bit because the sidewalk's been cleared out. Got a notification from my Maps app that this would all be kind of closed down to avoid the area, but I guess we didn't.
8 Metro bus lines in the area are being detoured, and because the Mount Vernon Square Metro station is within the secure perimeter, it will be closed starting Monday at 5 p.m. Restaurants and businesses impacted by closures will still be open, but have specific entrances people need to use, with some requiring extra security screening. Again, leave yourself plenty of time to get around this week. If you usually use the Mount Vernon Square Metro station, you'll have to use either Gallery Place or Shaw Howard stations through Thursday. In the studio, Daniel Hamburg, DC News Now.
All right, thanks, Daniel. Well, happening tomorrow at 11 a.m., the D.C. Council will hold hearings on renaming several streets in the district. On the list is the Bishop Groover Way Designation Act, which would change the name of the area in the 700 block of Quebec Place Northwest in Ward 1, and the Micaiah Wilson Way Designation Act. Wilson was only 10 years old when she was shot and killed in the 300 block of 53rd Street in Northeast in 2018. The bill will symbolically designate the area where she was murdered as Micaiah Wilson Way. And in Montgomery County tomorrow, County Executive Mark Elrich will get feedback on the county's operating budget for fiscal year 2024. City leaders are looking for input on the community's needs. The meeting will be held at 7 p.m. at the Black Rock Center for the Arts in Germantown. Well, finding affordable housing is a problem for many apartment hunting in the DMV, and Prince George's County no different. Some city leaders are now trying to offer solutions as some landlords raise the prices for rent. DC News Now's Jean-Marie Cisse takes a look at a proposal that could slow down that practice.
My rent was increased by 54%. It was increased an additional $800 or an additional $1,000 to go month to month.
Kia Jefferson is one of dozens of Laurel residents struggling to pay rent as landlords raise prices. City leaders are now proposing solutions.
The biggest issue is agreeing on a rental cap percentage.
Some city council members want to place a 3% rental cap increase on landlords through what's known as the Anti-Homelessness and Displacement Act.
It lays out an exceptions process. It lays out, an exemption process.
After several conversations with renters and landlords, the mayor's considering a 4% cap.
I think that a fair median would probably be meeting in the middle at 3.5%, especially given that the landlord said they haven't passed 3%, and AOBA in writing said they hadn't passed 3.4 for their clients on average. I still want to go forth with a bill, that might not have the full support of the council. Waiting, doesn't help people that need help, immediately.
The Maryland Multi-Housing Association, which represents landlords and managers, say they've been studying the issue.
It offers services, the ability to employ individuals in the city of Laurel is going to be tied closely to your total, the revenue you get from the real property tax. Studies have consistently found that real property tax assessments fall precipitously under rent control.
And they're calling for other solutions.
Other policies that can be put in place that don't depress the rental market, that don't result in real property tax losses, that don't result in lost apartments, and it can benefit people here in Laurel.
In Prince George's County, Yamari Sase, DC News Now.
Developing now, an arrest has been made in a 1988 plane bombing over Scotland that killed every passenger aboard. The Libyan suspect was taken into custody in the U.S. He's accused of building the bomb that destroyed a flight over a Scottish town nearly 34 years ago. That attack killing 259 people and 11 on the ground. Many of those who were killed were Americans. Developing now, a Patti LaBelle concert was put on pause due to a sudden bomb threat. This all happening on Saturday night in Milwaukee. The star was taken off stage by 3 people with her band members following closely behind her there. Later, the concert organizer released a statement saying that they would postpone that event due to the threat. Well, Veterans Affairs officials are working to improve health care access to veterans who were exposed to toxic substances during service. As Basil John reports, they're working on reaching veterans as soon as possible.
The hard work of implementing it begins.
With the Bipartisan PACT Act now passed, lawmakers are pushing the Department of Veteran Affairs to make sure veterans affected by toxic exposure due to burn pits are taken care of.
And given its transformative nature, it will, by definition, present implementation challenges and concerns.
The VA will start adjudicating claims at the start of the new year, and California Democratic Congressman Mark Takano wants the funding to be used appropriately.
Do you believe the Toxic Exposure Fund will improve health care and benefits delivery across VA?
I absolutely do think the funding will bolster our ability to be able to implement this legislation.
Some of the funding is already being used to hire new people to speed up claims processing, but some lawmakers are still worried about the VA's capabilities.
Our veterans have waited too long for the VA to fall short now.
Illinois Republican Congressman Mike Bost says the VA must do everything it can to aid the estimated 5 million veterans now eligible for expanded care.
Will the automation be able to significantly speed up the claims process, and by how much?
We're still quite early in the process. We want to ensure if we're going to invest in this technology that our staff is going to use it, that we have confidence that it's going to produce the right outcomes.
VA officials told lawmakers they have the resources to get the job done. Reporting in Washington, I'm Basil John.
And right now, after months of waiting in limbo, WNBA player Brittany Griner has returned to the United States after being sentenced for nearly 10 years in a Russian prison. But for many other Americans being held abroad, the wait continues. News Nation's Joe Khalil spoke with families who still have loved ones who are now waiting for freedom tonight.
I surely hope that they won't keep him for 14 years, but If they kept him for 10, that wouldn't be good. The uncertainty of it all is brutal.
Mark Fogel is the other American detained in a Russian prison on a trumped-up marijuana charge. Unlike WNBA superstar Brittany Griner, his case hasn't gotten international attention. Thursday, his sister Ann on News Nation's Cuomo pleading for officials to help get him home too.
I don't understand why they're holding this up unless they believe that he is lawfully there, that he deserves a 14-year punishment for this.
The similarities in Griner's and Fogel's cases are striking. Both were temporarily working in Russia. Both stopped by customs agents for small amounts of marijuana. In Fogel's case, half an ounce of medicinal prescribed by a doctor. And both were given unusually harsh sentences. But the difference in how the U.S. government has handled each case highlights the often complicated nature of diplomacy around getting Americans detained overseas back home. The State Department makes the call whether Americans are wrongfully detained, like in Griner's case, if the person meets certain criteria, like being innocent, targeted for their American citizenship, or held to secure concessions. But for Fogel, despite pressure from his family, lawmakers, and attorneys, the State Department so far has not said he was wrongfully detained.
I think every time we make an exchange with a rogue state, with a totalitarian country, with a terrorist group, we are setting a price, in effect, on other Americans.
While the Biden administration got praise for getting Griner home, they also faced criticism from some for negotiating with Russia at all, and for failing to secure Marine Paul Whelan in Russian prison for 3 years and counting. Now, the U.S. State Department does not keep a public running list of Americans detained overseas, but the James Foley Foundation, named for an American journalist who was killed by ISIS overseas, they estimate some 60 Americans are detained, mostly wrongfully, in other countries, places like Russia and Iran, Venezuela, Syria. What those countries have in common is they don't have great relations with the United States, which makes diplomatic negotiations with them much more difficult. In Washington, Joe Khalil.
All right, let's take a look at what we have outside our window in D.C. 43 degrees. We have some clear skies at the moment, but we will have some clouds drift in and out throughout the evening. And winds, well, they're starting to pick up a little bit here. Wind gusts up to 21 miles an hour at Cumberland, 19 at Kaiser, 15 at Martinsburg, Winchester, and Luray at double digits, and then Lexington Park, Annapolis, and Baltimore and Westminster. Not too much in the way of wind in and around D.C., Manassas, Fredericksburg, or Culpeper as we speak. But again, some of those winds will pick up as a front continues to slide east and out of the viewing area. Right now, our futurecast shows that, yeah, we have some clear skies, but clouds will come back into play as we go from tonight into tomorrow. So don't expect really fully sunny skies until we get to about Tuesday. And then beyond Tuesday, well, we have a storm system that we're going to be talking about here in the Weather Center. So what does it bring our way? Well, you have to stick around for my full forecast to get the fine details, but I can tell you through the headlines that yes, it is going to be a weather alert day on Thursday. But before that, sunshine on Tuesday and a dry start to the week. Even though there'll be clouds around on Monday, yeah, it'll at least be a dry day for us. We'll talk about temperatures and the full 7-day and the storm headed our way coming up in just a bit.
All right, thanks, Scott. Still to come here on DC News Now at 9, new details about the man shot and killed in the metro by an off-duty FBI agent. And later, have you heard of tipflation, what it means and why it's happening? You're watching DC News Now, covering you from the nation's capital to West Virginia. We'll be right back.